Let's see. Is it working? Probably. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Saturday stream. You just need to post the link to the Discord. Today we're talking about introverted sensing in MBTI communities. Let's see here. Because typically, over the past 10 years, you don't see a whole lot of introverted sensing in an MBTI community, whether Facebook's, Reddit, other Discords, etc. You don't see a whole lot of it. And that being that, generally speaking, introverted sensors will adopt essentially however it is that they grew up as the way of life for the rest of their life. However, that includes what everyone else is into, whatever's in style, whatever's popular, and they kind of just follow along with society in terms of what their interests are. But, which is why you don't typically see introverted sensing in MBTI, or in the community rather. Sorry, I'm trying to get the link set up, and I don't remember. I guess it's in announcements. Is that where I normally post it? Let's see. Let's see. At at everyone. Right? I think that's about right. I need a new icon for my YouTube channel. Let's see. Anyhow, I don't get too many introverted sensing preferenced people in my Discord, understandably so. Let's see, there's Pentcap, and then there's Envy. Hello to the both of you. Pentcap, I'm always comforted that you're the first person to say hello on the chat. You're on that consistently. Let's see, and then we've got Kiwi. Hi, Kiwi. Let's see. I have Lady V in the Discord right now. I think she's been on in here all night, but I think she's asleep. So won't worry about it too much. Pardon me. So we're talking about introverted sensing today, and its prevalence in the MBTI communities. Uh, it I've talked to a few introverted sensors recently. We have a couple of, no, at least one. We have one Discord regular, and then we had another one join in for introverted sensing preferences. And it seems that now, this according to Lady V, anyhow, it's becoming more popular in school. I don't know if it's going to reach the same levels as, let's say, South Korea, where everyone puts it on their job application, and whether or not you'll get hired based on that, which I think could be fair, because that was what it was used for in World War II. They used MBTI to assign people jobs. Now the problem that I have with that is that, well, most people are going to get it wrong, and they're going to walk around telling people that they are a personality type that they are not. And so that's where you start having these issues with trusting whether or not MBTI is useful, because you'll have someone that comes up to you and says, "Yeah, I'm an INTP. I'll be able to handle this." And then you give them the assignment, and then after like a week, of being at the job, they just kind of start sucking at it, and then it turns out that they were something else. And so a little bit of an issue. But on the point of introverted sensing, preference people getting into it, I would imagine, and I theorized that it's possible that under the right circumstances, an ESTJ or an ESFJ could get into MBTI, so long as the circumstances were correct. Then they could show a bit of an interest in it, possibly take it even further than that. I theorize that. And in terms of precedent for these specific personalities being into a typology as such, we have astrology. Now, astrology was pretty big back in like the 70s or something, way back when. And yeah, I met over the past 10 years. I would talk to a number of elder ESTJs or ESFJs, mostly ESFJs, that would be into astrology. They would get a tattoo of their astrological sign, or they'd wear the jewelry, have a ring, things like that. And so, as long as something is popular enough, you should theoretically get some introverted sensors to be interested in it. Something to talk about, something to do. So, still, I don't. I haven't seen a great number of introverted sensors. I think in terms of actually typing people, I've typed two ESTJs and one ISFJ, and that ISFJ was only there because Lady V wanted her to be typed, and has virtually no interest in MBTI whatsoever. So there's that. But a couple of ESTJs that had somewhat of an interest in it in MBTI. One of them is big into more sociology, but still, they said that they started out with MBTI and then moved on to something else. And so I'm wondering, I'm hypothesizing that as MBTI becomes more popular, that you will find more and more introverted sensors getting into it, or at least knowing maybe what their type is, or they would go out and take a test. I don't know how many ISTJs and ISFJs would be genuinely interested in MBTI. They're, that extroverted intuition being in the last position, it's really not something that they want to focus on. But ESFJs and ESTJs, I think it's possible. And we may start seeing a larger number of introverted sensors in the community moving forward, if we have something similar like astrology was back in the 70s. But what do you guys think? Do you think that introverted sensing is going to be something you'll see more of in MBTI communities moving forward? Love to hear your thoughts on it, or read them, I guess. And as for the background stuff today, it is Dark Tide, because I have unfortunately gotten kind of bored with Monster Hunter. Now, in the two cases of ESTJs that I typed, both of them fancy themselves as ENTPs, and I would like to just briefly touch on that. In that, yes, if you are having an interest in the more abstract topics such as typologies, then you're going to show that extroverted intuition to others. And it seemed like in both cases, they don't know, they don't have the enough of a perspective on what it means to have extroverted intuition in the lead position. So they more or less have normal lives. They get up, they go to work, they have generally organized spaces. Their rooms aren't total messes. They have regular jobs. I don't know if I mentioned that already. I'm tired. And like I said, more or less normal lives, except they also have an interest that they like to focus on. These like typologies, for example. And so they haven't quite figured out what the extreme looks like, and that's what I was looking for when I was learning about MBTI. It's like, okay, what does it really mean to have a function in the lead position? Go look for the extremes. The idea is that someone who has whatever function in the first position means that it controls their life. They can't turn it off. They can't get away from it. It's something that is permanently influencing their life, and to use it that much, you start to see the negatives in such a thing. What about introverted intuitive? Are they common? No, they are not common. A super strong preference. So I'm saying first position, second position, introverted intuition. That's very rare in general. That is not a common thing to have. So you're looking at INTJs, INFJs, ENFJs, ENTJs. They're very uncommon people, and depending on which type, so like ENTJs for example, you're not going to see a whole lot of them. And it's not because they are super, it's not necessarily because they're super rare. It's because they're going to be in places where most of us, mortal folk don't ever, end up. So they're way up here, we're down here someplace. So the odds of you actually running into one are very slim. But so no, introverted intuition is not common. It manifests itself as an extreme focus on one's own life, their goals, plans, ambitions. Uh, they keep wanting to move forward, keep moving up the chain, move up in positions of authority, make more money. Those are the kinds of things that they focus on. And so, as you can imagine, most human beings do not behave that way. Let's see. Kiwi says it seems likely that they would only get into MBTI if their social circle is into it or if it becomes more mainstream. Exactly. So, for example, an ESTJ or ESFJ in South Korea, that's very normal for them, seemingly. So, you have to expect that there's going to be some of those personality types that are big into it in South Korea. Um, but yes, most people believe that for introverted intuitives, most people believe that there is more to life than more enjoyment in life than just moving up the chain, making more money, training for a new position at their career, uh, to figuring out ways to make more money, going while pursuing their careers. Most people believe that there's more to it. So you take your stereotypical, let's say ISTJ. Let's say they grew up in a nice neighborhood and they were taught hard work is good work, and having that kind of a work ethic. They want to go to work, get it done by the book, see if there's ways to more efficiently get it done, or to maybe cut some corners here and there while still getting while still not getting fired. Then they want to come home and just enjoy life. That's stereotypical ISTJ. They're not like, oh yeah, I need to keep working so that I can move up the chain and then make a whole bunch more money. They're just like, I got my life, it's good, I want to enjoy it. And so for them, they don't get a lot of enjoyment out of constantly pushing themselves to follow up on one of their ideas and then try to turn it into something that makes more money. That's just not what that it doesn't feel good to them to do that. So they end up not doing that. But for an introverted intuitive, that is how they feel good: is the accomplishments, getting the tasks done, the objectives, and then seeing it rewarded by either making more money or moving up in position someplace. That makes them feel good to do so. They believe that that was the best thing they could do with their time, and those kinds of people are just not very common. Let's see. What's the difference between extroverted intuition and introverted intuition? So, in terms of manifestations, how you would see it. Of course, this is practical MBTI we're talking about. How can you see these things in real life? So, for extroverted intuition, it's about possibilities. Therefore, it jumps into the abstract. It jumps into the perspectives of other people, focusing on those things. So. Being into weird stuff, spacing out rather, and then living in your own kind of imagination. When you have it in the lead position, that makes up most of your life. You don't like to deal with reality. You don't like to necessarily get things done. You're just more interested in the journeys and of these imaginative thoughts. Not getting a whole lot done. comparatively. Introverted intuition might be best described as what ideas are good for me, and so that manifests as the drive to see to see those ideas get done. And mind you, this is in like first, second position, and that's more or less how it manifests. So it's a constant, my goals, my plans, my ambitions, and then constantly focusing on them to achieve them. So a little bit different, as you can imagine. A little bit different. Introverted intuition, ideas about everything. Or not, I'm sorry. Extroverted intuition, ideas about everything. Introverted intuition, ideas for me. And that's how you're going to see it manifest. Let's see. I wonder how it would affect MBTI if there were more introverted sensors interested in it. Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure what necessarily how it would affect MBTI. Obviously, introverted sensors prefer to do things procedurally. They go by the book. They would, if someone was really interested in it, like, so let's take your typical ESTJ being interested in MBTI, they're going to go find the literature. They're going to find the most accredited sources of information, and then they will repeat what they've read. They'll do their best to interpret wherever they're confused on, but in most cases, they just go by the book, follow the literature, and try to understand it that way. As for ESFJs, they would more likely attempt to read the literature, maybe and talk to other people who whatever people they believed made more sense to them, and then try to essentially like vibe type people based on what they understood. ESFJs being more people oriented, ESTJs being more trying to be more objective, try to get the technicalities in typing people or understanding themselves. I don't know how interested certain introverted sensors would be in understanding themselves, because I figure most of them believe they've got it figured out. Still, I haven't met a ISFJ that was super interested in MBTI. I've never met an ISTJ that was super interested in MBTI, but I have talked to ESFJs and ESTJs that showed a bit of an interest in it, just a bit, not a super amount. Dear Kristen is a ESFP. Yep, that's what she tells people. I haven't typed her personally, so I'm not 100%. So, and it's not very often that a it's not very often that I get a preferenced intuitive, whether extroverted or introverted, to type themselves as a sensor type. That does not happen often. Although I've had my suspicions about some people. So typically, when someone tells me that they are an S type, I oftentimes don't question it, just because it takes a certain level of introspection to come to the conclusion that you're not one of the more uncommon types. Most people that get into MBTI, 90% of people are going to type themselves as some kind of an intuitive. That has been my experience over the 10 years. People want to type themselves in a way that they wish they were, rather than what they actually are. And as I said, it takes a level of introspection and admittance to be able to say, okay, yeah, I'm one of these more common types, because no one wants to just be common. Everyone wants to be unique. Everyone wants to be a snowflake, understandably. So, um, I've had, matter of fact, I've had a number of ESFPs type themselves as, so in terms of mistypes, like self mistypes, I have the wildest ones come from ESFPs. ESFPs, I've known some that claim to be ENTP, some that claim to be ENTJ, which that's insane. ENFJs, and of course INFJ. That's more common. Um, that does in fact happen from ESFPs. Some of the wildest ones. But if dear Kristen says she's an ESFP, I am less likely to doubt it, because as I said, introspection. And I think is she Australian? As far as I know, ESFPs are rare in Australia. What are the stuff that people get wrong about introverted sensing? The only, at least in terms of over the past 10 years that I can remember, introverted, some people described introverted sensing as how you physically feel on the inside and noticing it. Which, of course, whether you're feeling a pain, an uncomfortableness, a tingling sensations, anything, or a lack of sensation, you're 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 feeling something. Usually, that's based on uh, extroverted sensing to notice some kind of a feeling. In this case, we're talking about touch, and so something touch related. And so I would say that that's extroverted sensing. I wouldn't attribute that to introverted sensing. For the most part, I don't think people get it necessarily wrong. It literally, it's memory. That is, that's what it's taking these moments in your life, these typically physical moments, and then storing the information for later. So what you remember seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, etc., and then remembering it, storing it for later. Let's see. Um, Thoughts on Enneagram? I don't have many thoughts on Enneagram. It seemed like I would need to know more about it. I don't know how helpful it is when you're trying to assign people to jobs, or if you were trying to manipulate someone into doing something for you. I'm not sure how helpful it actually is. I really don't know. It could be the greatest thing ever. It could be the worst thing. I'm not certain. I look at some of it, and I think the last time I gave it some thought with another human being, we were looking at the whatever. I think there was like nine of them. They're almost kind of like something that we would refer to as like cognitive functions, and so they had like it had these descriptors on it, and so I would play Enneagram bingo and be like, okay, well, I've got this, and then I've got this descriptor, I have this descriptor, and so on and so forth. So I'm not certain whether or not I have any kind of faith in Enneagram. As a matter of fact, I would say I don't have any yet. I would need to just see some more evidence in that it's useful. I wish I was a sensor. Sometimes I feel dumb not knowing some things. Do you feel the same? Yeah, I regularly tell people that if I were to change personality type, I would just go to ESTP, not ENTP. I want to do that. They get things done. They focus on their surroundings. They care about their physical well-being, or their well-being in general. I My life would probably be not as miserable if I were an ESTP, and the ability to manipulate people would still be roughly there. So yes, I oftentimes wonder what it would be like, or what my life would be like if I were a stronger preferenced extroverted sensor, but ESTP specifically. I don't know if I could get rid of or I don't know if I could enjoy life enough if I didn't have introverted thinking and extroverted feeling. Let's see. Dumb Truckus. That name is familiar to me. I think you left a comment about. Was it you that wrote a comment about Jeffrey Dahmer? You said it struck you as a Jeffrey Dahmer struck you as an extroverted sensor. I'm not sure if that was you or not, but if it was you, I don't. It's been a long time since since I had made that video, so I'm not sure if I went about explaining his introverted sensing or not. Or granted, it was also a long video. I'm not sure if you watched it all the way through, but I do explain that he was a preferenced introverted sensor, just based on what you read about it. Does seem very introverted sensing. Let's see. No, we got a whole bunch of comments that came in, and Die B, Die B, uh, donated $1.99. Thank you, Die. I appreciate any kind of financial support of any kind. Um, let's see. Weo says, "What's up? What's up? Ciao, belle, belly." I don't know. I tried to put an accent on that. Do INTJs usually have bad memory since their lowest cognitive function is introverted sensing? Yes. Yes. They have some of the worst memories out of human. Both. That's both INTJ and INFJ. Terrible, awful memories. My brother is an INTJ. He's been my best friend for, I think it's 34, 35 years now. Since he was born, he's been my best friend. And his memory is atrocious. Now, I don't tell him that his memory is atrocious often. Anyways, sometimes if we're having fun about it, then I'll be like, yeah, your memory's terrible. So when it comes to introverted intuition in the lead position, not only is their memory bad, they to make up for that, they often try to figure out what was the most likely thing that had happened before to make up for having memory. So when they claim that they can remember things, what they're actually doing is trying to reconstruct what they believed was most likely to happen in a past event, and then determine that that must have been what happened. And yes, they are wrong most of the time. It can be frustrating at times, but yes, they often have very poor memories. When you're always looking towards the future, you're not spending time in the past. So their preference for it, of course, would be extremely low, and therefore their ability to utilize it is very low. I do wonder if also people with a lead preference for introverted intuition oftentimes have issues taking accountability for the things that they do, and I wonder if it's because they have a difficult time remembering what their actions were in past experiences, and so they just don't believe that they could have made a mistake because to them it doesn't make any sense that they could have done something wrong. But yeah, memory is not great for them. So how is it possible for them to succeed in almost every carrier, as you said in one of your videos? They keep moving forward. They keep working hard. That's the the interesting thing about our, at least here in the United States. I don't know where it is in other parts of the world, but if you are conscientious and you continue to do your duty, whatever your responsibilities are, you can still move forward. Yeah, you're going to have setbacks, especially if you have poor memory. You're not going to remember about this thing or that thing. But if you keep moving forward, then you oftentimes will be successful. Hard work is oftentimes rewarded in my country. So keep working hard. You can be successful. I think you meant to say instead of carrier, it was career. I think. And no, they're not 100% always successful. I have known some lead introverted intuitives that tell me about how things are going poorly at their job, and that or people don't like them, people have these issues working with them, and that doesn't always end well for them, not every time. So not every time, but we have to think. So there's a finite number of super high positions that all these introverted intuitives want, and there's more introverted intuitives than we have super high positions. So not all of them are going to be able to make it to the top just because there's not a vacancy available. I always thought they was one of the smarter types. Shake my head. I have a specific definition for the word smarter or smart and intelligence. Those are two separate things. Now it's not that someone can't be both. I'm sure that there are. So when someone says smarter to me, usually what people are referring to is their breadth of knowledge in things, and they know this, they know that, and all these random weirdo facts, and that usually is what people decide is smart. And they are smart, I think. I wouldn't say that they are introverted intuitives are dumb people, not by any stretch of the imagination. It's just they make mistakes, as most humans do. They I found that many introverted intuitives have an issue when it comes to the perspectives of other people. They don't preference necessarily thinking about things in the abstract. They're more focused on just their goals, their plans, their ambitions, moving forward, getting into a good position, getting the right training, and being in a better place, or what they consider to be an objectively better place. And they make mistakes. So the smarter types are the S types, introverted, sensing, well, ISTJs. Once again, I don't know what you would consider to be one of the smarter types. I know an ISTJ, female, and she knows a fair bit about a fair number of topics. Now, they're not going to be crazy and out there kind of topics, but when it comes to general understanding, general education, trivia about maybe places around the world, usually she knows these things. But if it comes to talking about like random science facts or historical military actions, not going to be as knowledgeable. That's not something that she's interested in. So there's that. But I would think that in terms of like general education, ISTJs, depending on how they grew up, an ISTJ that grew up in the ghettos someplace that never got out of the ghettos, they're probably not, education isn't necessarily super high up on their list of things to acquire. But ISTJs can be in quote smart and have a wide number of facts about more common things. I've seen it. So yeah, introverted sensing is that programming, though. And since we're on the topic of, since today's stream is supposed to be about introverted sensing, we can explore that a little bit more. Introverted sensing, people that have a strong preference for it, first or second position, it's programming. So how they grew up, their surroundings, that completely influences how they're going to be moving forward in life. So if you're a strong preference extrovert or introverted sensor, and you grow up in a place where it's all about weird, random ideas and trying to think in the abstract, those are things that you're going to learn to try and do. You're going to try to preference it as best you can. It's still not, you're still going to just kind of default back to what you've seen, heard, tasted, touched, smelled, etc. But it would be more common for them to know about certain abstract topics like astrology, or not astrology, or typologies in general. So what does introverted sensing inferior look like for ENTPs and ENFPs? It's rebellion. It's, this is what everyone's doing, I don't want to do it. That's what it's going to look like. Everyone else is doing it, so I don't want to do it. And if they have to do it, they need to find their own specific reason as to why they are doing these things. And that's, of course, something that they'll tell people. Uh, an ENFP that I know, she grew up in a different part of the world, and she went to a Catholic school religion thing, which my brother ended up doing the same thing. Now, my brother's mother is an ESFJ, so that kind of followed suit. I don't know about the other ENFP necessarily, but she wanted to go there because it felt good to go there. She believes in God. She believes in these higher powers, and so there was a number of people that also went there, but she wanted to go there because she had a reason to do so. She found meaning in these things that she was supposed to be doing. And then, of course, when she didn't have to do it anymore, she understandably went about her business. Let's see. So yes, rebellion. It doesn't mean that they are. When I say rebellion, it doesn't mean that someone is just deciding to wake up one morning and go to their parents and say, you can f off. I'm trying not to swear on stream. Uh, you go, you go to heck. Yeah, that hurt me to say that. And I'm gonna go do whatever I want, and no one's gonna tell me to do anything. And my life is my own, and whatever. That's not the kind of rebellion. Passive, civil disobedience is usually how you see that, especially in the younger ones. It's civil disobedience. Someone tells you to do something, you're just gonna say, no. I think that's silly. That's what everyone else is doing. That's boring. I've seen it too many times. I'm going to try my own thing. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Uh, and that starts, of course, at a very, very early age. It's just a desire to want to go against what everyone else is doing. That's how it manifests. And for some reason, that's a very difficult thing to explain. Like I said, I had typed in a couple of ESTJs, and one of them really did believe that they were ENTP, and they were uh, they're not much younger than me, maybe about a decade, and they are doing the same job in the same line of work that their parents were doing after graduating from college in the same field that their parents were in. And it's trying to and for some reason that concept did not land uh, to them. That was not something that they could process. That look, this is you. This is the preference for introverted sensing that you're showing. You literally did the same thing that you're. As a matter of fact, you're still doing the same thing that your parents are doing. That's not something that a lead extroverted intuitive would do because it's something they can't turn off, and then therefore the introverted sensing is in the fourth position, and it's a rebellion. It's going against. Okay, that's what they're doing. I'm going to do something completely different. I do not want to do that. That's boring. That's what a lot of people do. I'm going to do my own thing. What would you say is Putin's MBTI? I've never met the man. I've only seen interviews. I don't know if it's age or not, but every time I see interviews with him, he is smiling, but it's almost kind of this more of a devious smile, like a mischievous smile. But I would say that based on what I know about him and what I've seen in interviews, I would actually go with an ENTJ diagnosis for Putin, and that these kinds of devilish smiles that he has during interviews and whatnot, I mean, of course, they could be faked, but I think that an ENTJ that's at his age may start trying to find enjoyment in the things that he does to people. What brand of vape do you use? Over the past 3 years, I think I found. Uh, n- I think they refer to them as Nom. Uh, Blue. This is blue, and they have different flavors for it. So I usually I'll go in and I'll get a different flavor. Blue Nomenon Ice is this one here. Blue Nomenon. Uh, they're oftentimes one of the cheaper brands in the store because realistically, I don't care about the quality so much as there's as long as there's nicotine in it. So Blue Nomenon, they have a variety of flavors, and I'm a fan of menthol, so I try to get menthol flavors if they have them, but I've tried some of the other ones. They're not so bad either. Yes. Introverted sensors, they may be on the rise, and we actually had someone new to the Discord that also seemed like an ESTJ, and they also claimed to be an ESTP. So, and it's it's a delicate situation because I want people to come to me and learn about MBTI so that they can use it in real life. I give them the relatable, practical understandings of MBTI, and hopefully they feel generous enough to want to kick a few dollars my way for doing it. And I don't I don't want to have arguments about it as much as possible. I don't. If I have to argue about it, then most certainly I will. It's obviously it's something I'm used to, but when people are arguing with you, it's usually because one person is right and the other person is wrong, and no one likes to be wrong. So typically, if I have to argue with someone about it, I can assume that I'm not going to get any financial kickback for doing it. And so I'd rather not argue with people about MBTI. If you believe that you are this type, that's totally cool. Just go about and do that. Uh, I don't think there's any necessarily perceived negatives. I mean, yeah, you can go and tell other people that you are a specific type, but as soon as you're around other people that know that you're not that type, then, well, they'll argue with you about it. Oh, more about the vape device. Yes, it started with an A. I got it recently. I think I got it a few weeks back. My other one, I broke it, obviously. That's going to happen with me in electronics typically, except my computers. I try to keep those alive as long as possible, but I knocked my other vape off the table too many times. And so this starts with an A, I think. No, it didn't. Memory's terrible. A Thelema, and it's because it reminded me of Athena. That's probably why I went with the A thing. The Thelema Quest, and then on the other side it says Lost Vape. I doubt that's the name of it. What I like about this one, many of the vapes that I've had over the years, it's usually like the battery compartment door. Like there's something wrong with it. I've had to tape them before, like they're some kind of spring loaded, or they have some kind of hinge on them that eventually wears out over time. This thing though, check this. It's magnetic, so you just put it there and then it closes on its own. I don't have to worry about a hinge getting worn out. I don't have to worry about springs wearing down. It did, however, cost me a bit of cat. I think this one was 80 something dollars at my local vape store. And of course, if you ever go to a vape, any kind of local shop, they tend to charge you up the butt for it. But yeah, so this one was probably a little. You could probably find this a lot cheaper on Amazon or wherever. But yeah, this one I think it was like 80 something dollars for this. And then because I bought it though, the batteries I purchased for it were half off, so that was nice. Let's see. Thelema is a new religious movement. Oh, well, I don't know what the Thelema religious movement is, but I like the vaporizer named after it. So, are there any celebrities that you think are ISTJs or ISFJs? Nothing comes to mind at the moment. Oh, uh, does anyone remember Charlie Murphy? He passed away some time back. I think it was leukemia, I think. Uh, Wonderful. He was hilarious because the stories that he told were hilarious. He loved telling stories, and I believe that he was an ISTJ. So that as for ISFJs, I nothing comes to mind at the moment. But if I think of some, I will remember. I will try to remember to say it or mention them. Speaking of vapes, I want some nicotine right about now, but my throat is killing me, so I have to abstain so I can heal. That's don't let reality tell you what you can and can't do, Kiwi. What, are you gonna let your body tell you what's right and what's wrong? Don't do that. Show it who's boss. Have you read Jung's description of the functions? He goes way deeper than the MBTI website does. No, I have not read a lot of Jung's work. Sometimes my friend Cal will send me super long copy and pasted paragraphs of Jung's work on that. The things that I have read from Jung, I actually ended up kind of like half of it I ended up disagreeing with. Um, which, as you would expect, I trust my own logic rather than the logic of someone else. Maybe that was just a desire to argue with the ghost of Jung. But what I took from the MBTI website was their definitions, and then I said, how can I apply these definitions in real life? Can they be applied in real life? But the reason that I took an interested in it, I took an interest in it initially because the functions that I read on the website were so similar to what I understood about people. So that I rolled with it. And as for Jung's further descriptions, as I mentioned not too long ago, the more high resolution we try to get when understanding people, the more likely we are to be incorrect. People do have their own unique experiences in life, and certain things about them will manifest in different ways. So I have not read Jung's descriptions. I just know that introverted sensing is about memory, extroverted sensing is about the world, or the literal world around you. Extroverted intuition is about ideas and possibilities in general, whether that's in the world around you or some world that you make up, etc., etc. Introverted intuition, goals, plans, ambitions for oneself, the ideas that are good for them. And then, of course, the list goes on. That's what I know about MBTI and how it manifests in real life. And so I found MBTI to be useful to me. And if I had to make the decision between learning more about some new brands of psychology or new typologies, or sitting on my ass doing nothing but playing video games, I'm going to choose the video game route. Nowadays, I've spent too much time in MBTI already, so that's enough work for me. Oh, that's satisfying. If I had a vape with that, I'd play it with like a fidget spinner. Absolutely. Thelema was created by Aleister Crowley. Well, it was Crowley. I don't think I can say it on stream. So yeah, I do recall who Aleister Crowley is. Kiwi's running a fever. Kiwi, if you're running a fever, I'm sure you've got like I don't know, European brand NyQuil. Just swig that and then get back to vaping. MBTI is based on Jung's work, though. The MBTI website seems like a distilled version of his writings. I agree that they distilled it into something that was functional, that they could use it for more practical terms. Yeah, I have no doubt that Jung tries to expand upon that and his what he noticed and his understandings. And I'm sure that there's a great deal of information that you could get out of Jung's work, but I wouldn't use what I read from him to try and change the MBTI system. I wouldn't. It's not that I wouldn't try it. It's that I wouldn't do that and then tell you about it, uh, because I would need a lot more verification before I started spouting off what I believed was correct. And so maybe one of these days I can get around to reading more of his work, and then maybe in like a Patreon video or something I can talk about what I noticed. Any any examples of people you know with the same personality types that are quite different yet share the same cognitive functions? Yes. So ISTJs and ISFJs. That's my go-to example for people that have the same functions, but can behave rather differently depending on where you go. So here in the United States, we have a great number of different cultures. And if you go to specific places in the country, you will notice some pretty big differences. So like I normally tell people, an ISTJ that grows up in like Central California, for example, or Oakland or Los Angeles, the way that they live their life, they have different priorities because they are programmed differently, but they follow along with that programming, and they're going to be a lot different from someone that grows up on the other side of the country because they have different priorities, different cultural values, different ethics, different beliefs, things like that. And so they're going to have, there's more often than not, they're going to have far different interests in life and what they believe is important and what is not important. But the cognitive functions remain the same. It's still about that programming, and they're still going to think extroverted. And they're going to be using extroverted thinking, and they're still going to have what would we say, somewhat of a preference for what they personally feel is the right thing to do, et cetera, et cetera. So, introverted sensing, extroverted thinking, introverted feeling, and then extroverted intuition. In both cases, when it comes to thinking outside of the box, the abstract stuff, oftentimes though, they're not going to be that interested in it. So that's my best example for people that have the same cognitive function preferences, but can act very differently. Let's see. Excluding those two, any other type, you could still see it in ESTJs and ESFJs. That programming is going to be different. Now, I have met, I think, possibly a ENFP who had some pretty different ideas about people, but I'm kind of thinking that she wasn't an ENFP when I think back on it. ENFPs generally behave the same. Lady V, for example, she, I believe her to be an ENFP, and my brother are ENFP. And even though she grew up in a different country, when it comes to how they handle a lot of situations, they are the same in that regard. So, another example. Let's see here. Crowley was nuts. Crowley was based. I don't know. Peace sign, die B. Kiwi says ISTJ makes sense. I'm pretty sure my mom is one, and she's not exactly the serotype, but it just makes so much sense for her to be one because of how she approaches problems and how she acts at home. Well, that's absolutely possible. Anything's possible. That's what I like to tell people. And someone with just a circle for a name says, hi, y'all. Hi, circle for a name. Let's see. But when it comes to, let's say, an ENTJ, regardless of where an ENTJ grows up, they are still going to be focused on acquiring the knowledge that's going to move them forward in life, regardless of where they're at. Now, they may end up taking different routes to get there based on how they grew up or what the available resources and where it is that they grew up, but they're still going to be trying to get to the top. Do you think reading on Jung's work would give you a more holistic overview of MBTI? Maybe it'll help with typing people as accurately as possible. It might give you more nuanced knowledge of it. Anything's possible, most certainly. I don't like reading. Is job one. I am not as much of a fan of reading as I might have been when I was much younger, when I didn't have access to a computer and therefore an access to video games. But and when I do read something for something more interesting, I would rather listen to it than read it, and that way I can be listening to something while playing a game at the same time. But it is possible that reading more of Jung's work might give me those insights. Now, before I even knew about MBTI, I was already pretty certain that I understood people. And my understanding of people hasn't changed. It may have gotten slightly better. Like I pick up on other little subtleties that people express that give me a better understanding into their mind. But when it comes down to it, I would rather trust my own understanding of people than to trust someone else's. And that's just a default of mine. And so far, with my 36 years of experience dealing with people, uh, I haven't been wrong about someone in like 16 years roughly. When it comes to understanding how someone behaves and why they behave the way that they do, that has been, I have reinforced my understanding of people through experiments and practice, and so now I'm pretty sure that I understood people in general. I can predict their behaviors and get what I want. And that's really the proof, realistically. Like, if you're trying to prove that what you understand about people is correct, you should be able to manipulate them in relatively simplistic ways to get the result. And if you do that thousands of times, most likely you're onto something. And so that's how I more or less look at it. Let's see. What about ISTJ dads? What about ISTJ dads? They're uh, let's think about a healthy-ish. I don't know what healthy means necessarily, but someone who's generally normal and obeys the laws, follows the community guidelines wherever it is that they live. They expect you to do what they did. They expect you to follow the same rules, and they're probably strict on rule-related things. I don't suspect ISTJ dads to be overly emotional. I don't expect them to be overly loving, but I imagine that they do want to continue doing whatever it is that they do that works for him and his family over and over and over again. Opinion on introverted sensing in INFPs. Oftentimes I see introverted, I mean, I've been talking to Cookie Dough as of late. She will remember things that I said from like 2 weeks ago. So I thought that was, pretty. She can't word for word everything that I say, but she does. She has a knack for bringing up certain. I think I just lost Lady V. She was in the Discord, as I said. I think she was asleep, but now she's gone. So INFPs, though, when they get depressed, that's when the introverted sensing starts to torture them a little bit harder. So they are remembering the reasons why they are depressed. They will start remembering all the bad things in their life, and that tends to keep them pulled down in places. So uh, that's most of the time. That's how I see it expressed. Is they are. I've known a number of INFPs, and they really love talking about things that made them sad, specifically in the males, but of course I've also known the females to do the same. So, what's your opinion on MBTI dating websites? They are not good. In theory, on paper, an MBTI website could be more helpful, but it's only going to be helpful if everyone is typed correctly. If they are not typed correctly, then you are just uh, there, and you're at the whims of whatever someone felt like typing themselves that particular week. And that's not going to be very helpful to you, especially if you're trying to get to know a certain personality type. So, my opinion of them is that on paper, it could be a good idea. I would like to see more of that. If I could create my own dating website where I personally typed every person and then gave them, the moniker for it, I would like to see what happens as an experiment. But I don't know if I have the time to make a dating website and then personally type literally every person that wants to be a part of the website, presumably for free. So that'd be a little much. All right, let's see. I think most people around me are introverted feelers, and I think knowing MBTI helped me know how to handle them better. When it comes to certain personalities, certain cognitive function preferences, having an understanding of MBTI can be extremely helpful. You'll know what subjects you can broach, which ones to stay away from. Uh, that is It's very helpful. I can't. I would like to get more specific, but then I risk getting demonetized for this video. So, yes, it's extremely helpful. How do you know you haven't been wrong on typing people? How do I know that I have been wrong? So that was, I mean, what's the best way to go about how do I know? There are some things in regards to the cognitive function definitions that I have. Of course, over 10 years, you really start to think about whether or not you even have the correct interpretation, or not interpretation, but translation from, MBTI cognitive function definition to real life. But for example, introverted sensing is about memory. I'm not sure how else you could interpret the definition of introverted sensing to something else. I'm not certain how you could do that, but I'm fairly confident in my understanding of the of those MB of my just of the understanding of the definitions. I'm fairly confident of that, and so I need to know that. So, for example, if it's an introverted sensor, then what I'm expecting is them to stay on routine, do the things that they're supposed to be doing, have not necessarily random knowledge, but have a excellent memory on whatever past events, whether long term or short term. And those are the things that you would test for. So if you believe that introverted sensing is about memory, then you go and you test for those things in people that you believe have a strong preference for it. And that's of course how I do the typings for people, is I use that line of logic to figure out what someone's aggregate preference for functions are. And so but being 100%, do I ever really know 100% about anything? I would wager not 100%. But I am fairly confident. And by fairly, I mean I do, in fact, believe that I have a great deal of understanding when it comes to typing people. I just you experiment with it. I did it over the course of 10 years. You take these theories about how you believe the cognitive functions behave in real life, you go out and test it. So if someone's supposed to have a strong preference for introverted sensing, then that's what I'm expected to see. I'm expecting them to harken back to times in their life that guide them forward. I'm expecting them to have great memory and detail, things like that. And when it comes to MBTI, whether or not people should trust me, I say you shouldn't just outright trust me. If what I say makes sense to you, then that's great. That's what I'm trying to do. But you should take the definitions yourself and use them in real life. Try to find the correlations between these definitions and people's behaviors. Find out for yourself if it's actually working, if it's true. How do ENTPs, extroverted, intuitive, and extroverted feeling loops? Yeah, I don't believe in loops and grips. That's not something that I got to witness a whole, really ever in my 10 years of MBTI experience. But granted, they may have their own understanding of what a loop is, and maybe they're correct on whatever their personal definition for that is. And how are these types SI grips like? Yeah, in terms of grips, I can maybe count two times in my life where I believe that I was, in quote, gripped by, let's say, introverted sensing, in that I've I would stop everything that I was doing because things were not working out for me at that moment. I was drinking a lot and I didn't like my job, obviously, and I decided one day to just reorganize the entire room, which of course that meant mostly spending like 2 hours picking up trash, but to move the bed in a different position, move the entertainment center in another position, and it seemed like a very ISFJ thing to do, was to reorganize the room so that it was better for me and for other people that wanted to be in the room. Like two times, and of course, was I how long was I gripped for? Like 2 hours, 3 hours, and so when people tell me about these grips and loops, they describe, oh, this so and so is going through a loop phase right now, so they've been this way for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and like I have not seen that. I have not seen I have not seen an INFP that was gripped by extroverted thinking. I have not seen an ENTP that was just so gripped by introverted sensing that they completely changed how they view life for like a month. I have not seen that ever. And as for loops, uh, they also talk about being in a loop and how it usually comes about when you're not when things aren't going well for you. You get like in quote stuck in these loops, and I to be stuck in a specific loop, you that would be like what's the idea? Like they're shutting off a part of their brain so that only these two functions are moving over and over and over again, which of course is silly. That loops, grips, I haven't seen it, and I don't have a reason to believe that they exist. I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that those things are in fact real. I think that they are extra things that were added onto it to try and spice up MBTI a little bit more. Uh, and so I would say no, no to that. How do you type unhealthy people? I I I like to believe that most of us are not perfectly healthy. So I would think that typing unhealthy people is essentially just typing a normal, just a person. Now, I have, however, met a few extremely healthy ones. Like nothing's got them down. They're moving forward in life. They're getting all the things that they need done. I have seen that, and they are very few and far between. But I would think that most people this day and age are in quote unhealthy. So I just type them as if they're normal people because it seems like unhealthy is the norm now. In terms of extroverted sensors, how would they use introverted sensing? Same way that I would use introverted sensing or that you would use introverted sensing. Introverted sensing is that function governs its memory. Now, do they have, if we're talking about how often they preference it, I would say that yes, like, an ESTP, for example, is going to have a far better memory than me, as an example. But it pops up once in a while for them. It just means that they have more of a use for it than other personalities. They rely on it a little bit more. And so yes, typically an extroverted sensor is going to have a better memory than someone that has introverted sensing in like the eighth or seventh position. How can you type someone without coming to an overall understanding of their levels of health, both mental and physical? Wouldn't someone look completely different depending on that? No, not really. You still so people have this strange understanding that when in regards to MBTI that if they're in a bad place, if fight or flight is going on, if they're just super scared or depressed or sad, that they all of a sudden want to change their behavior and do other things. That's not what animals do. When an animal is hurt, when an animal is scared, terrified, or high up on adrenaline, animals go to what's familiar. People are no different. When someone's stressed out, like really stressed out, and they're at the end of their rope, they go back to what's comfortable for them. That includes how they process reality. They go back to the normal. They don't just become a different person because they're upset. They do not do that. Um, so, as a matter of fact, early on in my YouTube stuff, and when I was talking about MBTI, I said that if you're trying to type yourself in the most negative light possible. Think about all the bad things that you really don't like about your life, and try to figure out what cognitive function preferences you're using here, like which ones you're going with, because that's it. It has been my experience that that's the best way to get a personal understanding of who you are. Look at all of the negatives, all the things that are you would consider to be objectively bad, and do that. And no, they don't look completely different. And INFP, it's about having the experience to see those cognitive functions, whether someone's in a good mood or a bad mood, and seeing how that behaves. So an INFP male that's in a good mood wants to talk about more positive things, wants to get to know people, wants to experience them, see how they feel about things, so that they can add to their catalog of understanding human behavior. And then, but so that would be a use of introverted feeling and extroverted intuition and introverted sensing. So, and that's when they're in a good mood. When they're in a bad mood, they're depressed, they got broken up with, they haven't felt the touch of another human being in months, they're still in a bad mood. They're wondering about what they could have done to make their life possibly better, or not necessarily, or not, that's the wrong way to word it. They imagine past scenarios in which they could have, what if they ask themselves what might have happened if I had done something differently? How would I have felt about it? How would that person have felt about it? Still using the same cognitive functions, but in a more negative way. They're still the same person. That's still what they do, whether in a good or a bad mood. They just use those functions in ways that most of us would consider to be negative. A correlation between speech patterns and typology. Once again, like the ISFJ example comes to mind. Uh, I don't I don't think so. Not to a significant enough degree that I would use that. However, I have noticed that when it comes to no, that's getting that might offend someone. So I think that there is that, but that is a more not YouTube appropriate conversation. But on my Discord, we could possibly talk about that. Let's see. I think MBTI dating websites will only further reduce your chances of a match because there will be a lot of prejudice and bias, most certainly, and people will be chasing after your type, not you as an individual. Thoughts? I think that yes, that is correct. So it's actually it's a really a compounding problem, right? So you've got people who are coming after you because they think you're this very specific personality, and they don't really know anything about MBTI. On top of that, so they don't know what their type is. They wouldn't be able to tell if you were the type you claim to be, and that's really bad, right? So they could be chasing someone that they think is a good personality for them, and it's completely not. Yeah, don't. And as I've said, do not use MBTI as a guideline for dating. Just don't do that. Like, can it work? In some ways, yes, it can. But unless you're willing to put in the time and effort to really learn about the stuff, practice it in real life, make sure that everything you understand about it is correct and that it follows a pattern of understanding. Unless you're willing to do that, just don't do it. Because there's a great deal about MBTI that comes from the experience of using it and finding things out for yourself. So when it comes to dating someone, go for common interests, not common cognitive functions. That's what I keep telling people. Do not use MBTI for dating. Even go with what you have in common. I think you'll have a much better time in your dating life if you do that. Just common interests. Do that. Let's see. And then Kiwi is curious and she wants to know. Of course you want to know, Kiwi, and we can talk about that later. There are a great number of sensitive subjects that I could go into based on my 10 years of experience dealing with humans in regards to MBTI. And not all of those insights are pleasant for everyone to hear. So we got to remember humans are terrible creatures in general. We're not angels. We're humans. Um, and it has been my in for my from my perspective, people tend to do more harm than they do good, more often than not. There are some people that do produce more good. They are rare and few far between, but most people are bad. We do bad things to each other, and that you can see some correlations between cognitive function preferences and our behaviors that are mostly negative. So, boy, it's getting warm in here. Excuse me. Let's see. Let's go back. My guideline, though, for typing people and whether or not you have an understanding of it, the frequency charts. I don't know if they've updated the frequency charts on their website at the moment, on the MBTI website, but you should be able to find the general frequency charts correct. generally speaking. Yeah, there's going to be some places in the world where it's not going to, if you grab 1,000 people, it's not going to look like that. And in many cases, when that does happen, it's going to be like, wow, where are all the intuitives at? Because you're picking a specific part of the world where there's just not that many people that want to think outside of the introverted